Welcome, everyone. My name is Ralph Sacamone. I'm the Executive Director with the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission, and here behind me, to my right, is Kyle Gill, our General Counsel. We also have some other members that will be speaking throughout the presentation, but I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Also, thank, of course, the Holyoke Board, Alex and her entire team, and also Rep. Duffy, who actually organized all of this together. We used to run this yearly in Springfield, and then Rep. Duffy and the Holyoke Board and Alex suggested we come here this year. This was a great turnout. So what this is going to be about today is licensee compliance. We want to show you the way to stay out of trouble. We have a lot of people that are ending up with violations that do not know that they are creating violations. So we're going to break the session down into 4 segments, and I'll get you out of here before noontime, I promise you. Segment number 1 is we're gonna talk about all the problems we see with applications. All right, people forgetting to do amendments, bringing in partners that haven't been vetted. We're gonna cover all that. Second, and during that same process, we're gonna take you to a live shot of our website where we'll actually show you how to navigate and find all the information you need. All right, and a lot of it can save you a lot of money because you don't have to call a lawyer to find out exactly what you have to file, items to that extent. And then the second half of the presentation, we're gonna talk about all the fallacies out there. People think they can do this, but you really can't do it. We're going to clear up all of that out there. Then our General Counsel, Kyle Gill, is going to talk about compliance checks and all the duties of a licensee. And then we're going to finish it off with Tom Carroll from the U.S. Department of Labor is going to talk about wage hour and child labor. We found that there's been a lot of child labor going on out there, and people don't know they're breaking the law because you only can work at a certain age and items to that extent. So basically, that's how we're going to move forward. Now, does everybody have a copy of the green PowerPoint? This is exactly what we're going to show. I gave this to everybody, write notes on it. Whatever you do, take it back. It's a great training tool. All right, especially if you're starting where you have to hire a new manager, items to that extent. Also, you can find this on our website, and we'll show you later on the frequently asked questions. So if you need to run more copies off, or if it's better to show it on the website to any of your team members, it's a good point to go to. All right, so we're going to move on with the presentation. First thing we're going to talk about is changes to existing licenses. So everybody in this room, at one time, either you own a license, you purchased a license, you transferred a license, or you applied new. So basically, it's a 3-step approval process. How that works is you go to the ABC website, you click on to apply for a transfer or a new license. You fill out the application, you print it out, you do your payment online, you take that receipt, and you take the application with all the supporting documents, and you bring it to the Holyoke Board. At that time, Alex and her team, if it's a new license, they will explain to you about the advertisement, alerting the abutters, and the day of the public hearing. Same thing for a transfer. Transfer is all the same except for you don't have to alert the abutters. So basically what happens at that point is that you will have your hearing date, and during the hearing, actually a public hearing you get to speak about your business plan, everything. The local board then votes upon it. When they approve the application, what they do is immediately they email the application to us. It goes into an e-licensing portal. At that point, we receive it, and within 15 minutes to 30 minutes, it's assigned to the Investigation Enforcement Division. So at that point in time, a lot of people have dealt with our ABC investigators as they review the application. And then at that point, what the investigators do, they'll make a recommendation to the commission, and then 2 of the 3 members have to approve your application. That's step 2. And then the third step is we actually send the approval back to the Holyoke Board, and they issue a hard copy license. At that point in time, you can begin to operate. When you have the hard copy license in your hand, you can begin to operate. Anything at that point, any new managers you bring in, any new officers, directors, do alteration of premises, you want to pledge the license, you have to file an amendment application. Because what the local board has done in the ABC, we approved you on all of the documents and information you set before us on the original approval date. If you make any changes, you have to file an amendment application. That's where people are dropping the ball. If you look up on the board, you see the items there in red and blue. All right, these are all the issues that we see out there. The one in red is the actual most popular violations people run into. If you look at the top, transfer of stock, issuance of stock, and new stockholders. Okay, what is the role of the local board and the ABC? What we do is when we receive an application, we investigate the business. If you're a corporation, you're an LLC, you are a partnership, or you're a sole proprietor, we investigate your business. All right? Everything about the individuals being involved and so forth. And then we vet the individuals. What we mean by that, we're required under the law. All right, anyone that has a direct or indirect ownership is that we vet them. So if you have ownership in the license, all right, we have to do a background check on you. And there are statutory disqualifications that eliminate you from holding that position. So if you are originally approved and then you bring a new stockholder in because your business is growing and you're going to expand, all right, the problem is that person that you're bringing in cannot assume any role and have any authority until it has been vetted by the local board and the ABC. Because here's the point. If you are a package store owner, all right, there are statutory disqualifications. You have any type of felony, all right, you are disqualified from ownership. So if you bring in a partner in your package store and that person has a felony and you never get them vetted by the local board and the ABC, you're putting your license in jeopardy. We don't want that to happen here. For restaurants, all right, on-premise consumption, which are Section 12s, all right, the issue is there's a different disqualification. It's anyone that has a felony or a misdemeanor narcotic conviction, you're automatically disqualified from holding the license. Now, why are the rules different for package stores and the rules are different for on-premise consumption? It's the reason why they wrote the laws a long time ago. We have filed amendments to the statute, and there is legislation out there to allow what we refer to as a character and fitness. What happens right now? Just say 30 years ago, you're 18 years old, all right? You stole a car. You ended up with a felony, right? 30 years later, you're trying to open a package store. You can't, all right, because you have that felony on your record. We have put in legislation to try to correct that in the long run, saying, look, you did have a felony 30 years ago, but you've been a great citizen. You've done your time. You did everything right. And 30 years later, we're looking to give the local board the jurisdiction in the ABC to classify it as character and fitness and try to waive that. So there is pending legislation to correct that. All right, so if you've done something that was improper many years ago and you've been a good citizen and no problems at all, we want to be able to give people the opportunity to move forward. So that's why you have to be vetted, and that's the biggest problem. You bring in a new stockholder, you give him authority, he's making decisions on that license. What is a license? You have a liquor license, a controllable substance, all right? You have to have authority, and there's rules and guidelines. Our general counsel always used the phrase, a license is a privilege. It's not a guarantee. With that privilege, you have to make sure you respect the guideline rules and the regulations. So that's why we have to vet people. If you jump down to the second one in red, which is the change of office, directors, trustees, all right, or change in business structure, there's another problem we see. People say, oh, what's the difference if we change the president? All right, what the rule, if you look at it right now, where alcohol is a controllable substance, and you have a board of directors, they have oversight of that liquor license. They're making decisions to hire the manager. They're making decisions to appoint the treasurer. They're making decisions to expend the premises, like an alteration of premises. All right, they're making, if you're going to pledge the license, like put your license up for collateral if you're taking out a loan, all of that comes through your board of directors, or if you're an LLC, it comes through the LLC managers. That's why all LLC managers, all officers, directors, trustees, all right, and board of directors all have to be vetted through the same process we talked about earlier. So we have a lot of problems with the clubs, all right? I know you have annual elections every year, all right? People forget to say, oh, the president has changed, all right? Or the commander of the VFW has changed, but the new person's in there is signing the application, moving forward to appoint a new manager. What our investigators do and our commission does, they look who signs as an authorized signature. If you have not been approved, they're going to return that application. That means you're going to slow down the process. That means you have to file another application for a change of manager, a change of office of director or LLC manager before you can move forward on the change of manager application. So it's important. We see a lot of those. You want to stay on top of it and file your amended application. And then the last one in red is change of manager. That is probably one of the biggest violations we see out there. When your manager is originally approved, all right, at that point in time, if you are going to appoint a new manager, you have to file an amended application process. And the reason why is there's a big fallacy out there that a manager controls the outcome of a license. They do not. All right, what your corporation, your LLC, is doing, you're appointing a person as the license manager to run the day-to-day affairs. What happens is, we know sometimes you have to let people go, they don't show up to work, and we always get the call all the time is, oh, I was the former mayor, I'm no longer the manager at Sacramone's Pub. Go down there and shut them down right now, they don't have a manager. That's not true. All right, what we want is communication. If the manager walks out or you have to let him go, or her go, what we want you to do is flip an email to Alex at the local board. You wanted to be able to say, look, at Sacramone's Pub, Ralph Sacramone is no longer the manager. We're actively seeking a manager. So she knows that Ralph is gone. All right, you're actively looking for a new manager. And then if Kyle is my partner, all right, he has already been vetted. Kyle is going to assume the role temporarily until we find a new manager. Now you got the communication going on there, because when my investigators walk into your facility, on their phone, they know everything about you. All right, they know who the owners are, they know who the manager is, they know the layout, they know the description of the premises, everything is right in front of them. And this is the problem we have. My investigators walk in, doing their normal enforcement. They say, can I speak to the manager? Kyle goes up to them and says, I'm the manager. They look on and says, no, Kyle Gill's not the manager. Ralph Sacramone's the manager. Oh, Ralph's been gone for 3 years. It happens all the time. So you got Kyle Gill has never been vetted by the local board, right, for character and fitness, and never vetted by the ABC. That's a violation. We don't want to see that happen. So the minute you have the issue with the manager leaving, if you don't have, some of it happens right on the spot, or other ones, you know, you have 2-3 week notice, you want to communicate that with the local board, then actively look for a new manager. All right, and we say actively, we would love to say within 2 weeks or 4 weeks to get an application for change of manager from the board, but sometimes it's tough to find people. But as long as you got somebody that's already been vetted covering it, you can't wait a year or 2 years. You understand that? You have to fill that position. If you can't find somebody, fill it with Kyle then, who's already been vetted, put a change of manager application in, follow everything you need, and you'll be able to take care of it that way. Any questions on that?
Yeah. What happens if you have an assistant bar manager? How would you apply an assistant bar manager? The bar manager is still the person that does it, but you have the assistant bar manager. Do we need to make an application for him?
All right, so here's the question. What happens if there's an assistant bar manager? It's not required by law to have an assistant bar manager. It's required to have a licensed manager, all right, the main manager. If that is to happen, right, you can't give him the authority because he's never been vetted. All right, what you want to do is they'll communicate immediately to Alex what's going on, file the application for the assistant manager to assume the role. In the meantime, someone else that's already been vetted will cover it, and then you can start the process with the assistant manager.
When you have change of officers, is that the whole board, anybody on the whole board, is it just the president or the commander?
All right, depending how your corporation is set up, the question was when you go to change your office directors of your board, all right, depending how your corporation is set up, some of them require at all times you have to have a president, treasurer, secretary, or a commander, a vice commander, et cetera, down the line. Depending how it is stated, if you have 5 people that have been approved for president, secretary, director, president, secretary, treasurer, and then 2 directors, you got 5 people approved. If one of them leave, you don't have to reapprove the other 4. You just got to get a new application for change of manager, say the president left. But you still got to list who are the active people that are there. If the whole board leaves, you got to file for the whole board. So it's important on that. You don't have to file every single time if you're not changing that person's position. If the treasurer is always Ralph Sacramone, but you're changing the president and one of the directors, you still file the application, and it asks you a question. Who are the present officers? Who are the new officers? You complete the whole packet, and then there's an explanation of the vote. We're reappointing, or we're appointing a new president and treasurer. Any questions on that? All right, and other items you see in blue, same thing with change of ownership. You cannot, here's one of the biggest fallacy out there. People are going to sell their licenses. That's great. They're going to go off and retire, sell their license, and move forward on it. Here's the issue you have. You are the seller. When you start the process, what happens is the buyer comes in and files an application for a transfer application with the local board. He goes online, fills out the application, does the payment. All right, you give him your tax releases, Department of Revenue, Department of Unemployment Insurance, then he files with the board. Okay, in the meantime, you have signed a P&S to move forward. All that P&S is a document that the local board looks at and the ABC looks at to officially commence the transfer. It's only a document. All right, what has happened, as soon as people sign the PNS, they step aside and said, oh, the restaurant's all yours. That's not true. All right, until you go through the three-step approval process, the local board approving, the ABC approving, and then the third approval going back to the local board, and they issue out a new hard copy of the license with the new entity name on it, the new manager, then the seller, your responsibility is done. In the meantime, you are responsible for everything that happens on that licensed premises. All right, we see all the time people do sign a PNS, and then they walk away, the new person's running the place, and then there's an incident. All right, somebody gets overserved, leaves there and hurts someone, the police do the investigation, or the ABC comes back, oh, they were overserved here, all the evidence, they charge a violation. They don't charge the new people because the license has never been approved. You got to charge the seller. So don't put yourself in jeopardy and lose everything by turning over the authority on that. Any questions on that? Also, looking at renovations, alteration of premises, one of the biggest things we see out there is people jumping the gun. Say right now, we have this premises all approved, all right? We'll call this 2,000 square feet. Your business is doing great, you want to expand to next door. It's contiguous, so you're going to expand and take over another 2,000 square feet. So you go file an alteration of premises. All right, you do the application online, print it out, you submit everything to the local board. They alert the abutters, you have your hearing, then you get approved the local board. All right, what happens at that point? It's got to go to the ABC. We have to send an investigator out, do an on-site to approve it. What's happening is when my investigators are arriving at these locations, people are already serving in the new area. You can't do that. It has not been approved. Your license on the wall has not been amended to include that area. So you want to make sure you don't jump the gun. Everybody understand that? Just wait for the three-step to go through, and once you receive, what your protection is that hard copy of the license with the new description on it. It's 3,000 square feet here, plus another 2,000 there, total 5,000 square feet. Now you can operate. We always see that. So I want everybody to understand that. You want to wait for the process to be done. And then also goes with the change of location. If you're moving from 10 Main Street to 40 Broadway, you cannot move the alcohol into the new location until the three-step approval is done and you have in your hand a hard copy application with the new address and the new description on your hand. Everybody understand that? All right, and then the last one we talk about is when you're originally approved, you're petitioning the board these days and times you want to operate. Everybody comes in, I want to operate 7 days a week. I want to operate from 12 noon till 1 a.m. We'll just pick those hours, right? At that point, if you decide you're not going to operate 7 days a week and you're going to close on Mondays to give everybody a day off, you have to go in and change your hours. You understand that? Because you petitioned the board, and the board looked at it for public need and common good and approved you for a 7-day license. If you want to be only operating 6 days, that works out right. If you decide, we see this a lot, people open as a restaurant and automatically, after a few months, turn into a nightclub. That means they close Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The local board did not give you a 4-day-a-week license. They gave you a 7-day license, and they felt there was public need and common good for it. If you are going to change to that, you have to go in and change your hours. Does everybody understand that? Yes.
She's the boss today. Sometimes some restaurants, just given the seasons, might close just for the summer for Mondays, let's say, but then they want to reopen in September on Mondays. Do they come to the board and let them know that, even for a short period of time?
Absolutely. If you're going to close more, now I'm not talking about one-offs. It's a bad storm coming in, you decide to close at 9 o'clock, or you just close for the day, that's okay. But if you're going to consistently close on Mondays for 3 months, all right, go in and change your hours, and if you want to come back, and you just file your hours again. Remember one thing, a change of hours does not cost you any money. All those other transactions do. That's a free charge they give. But the purpose is, why I'm telling you this, is your competitors are going to complain. 50% of our complaints come from competitors. All right, the minute you put it up on social media, we close on Mondays, they say, well, they never change their hours. All right, I'm running 7 days a week. Why have they not got permission? We get that all the time. So it's important anytime you are changing from your hours and your days and you're going to do it, or moving forward, you're going to close during the summer months on Mondays and Tuesdays, you have to make sure you change your hours with the board. Yes.
Just for vacation?
No, vacation you don't. What you want to do with vacation, here's a good question. What about going on vacation for a week? Very, very simple. Just flip an email to the local board, say, listen, we're going to close for a week, we're going on vacation, so everybody understands what's going on, or we're closing for 30 days to do a remodel. Just flip an email, now you're on the record, the local board knows what's going on, and then you're covered. All of that we're looking for is communication. Wait a minute,
Question, telephone call or email?
either way, you can speak with Alex how she wants it. The question was, can you do a telephone call or an email? Either way, you can check with Alex how they want to accept it. I would always say back it up in writing, right? Just send a letter in or send an email in. It's all about communication. This is what we want, so you have no headaches.
Thanks so much. Can you repeat once again and just make sure it's clear for everybody on the point you made regarding change of use of the space?
All right, so alteration of premises. If you're going to expand, all right, and it's contiguous to the premises. So what you want to do is, you got to remember, you go and you file an alteration of premises application. All right, you submit that to the local board. They have to alert the abutters. You have to have a hearing. You can't have a hearing no early than 10 days. Then the local board approves it for moving to expand your premises. At that point, you cannot move into the premises selling alcohol or whatever. Even if it's a change of location, you can't move it to a new location until you go through the 3-step approval process. Local board approval, ABC approval, because we'll come out do an on-site, and then once the commission approves it, they will email back the approved application, and then the local board will issue you an amended hard copy license with the new area or the new location on it.
Yeah, the point you were making about you got your license to sell alcohol because you're a restaurant, and now Thursdays and Fridays, all of a sudden you want to change into a nightclub. We have that issue a lot here. Folks don't understand it and get it when enforcement comes in. That's the, if we can elaborate on that and make that.
You're approved to open as a restaurant. All right, a restaurant requires you to have bathrooms, requires you to have a kitchen, requires you to sell food. All right, we have some people that come in, apply for a restaurant, then a month later decide to stop serving food and turn into a nightclub. All right, you can't do that because you apply for a restaurant license, it requires you to sell food. If you want to change to a nightclub, you have to come in and amend your license type to what we call a general on premises. All right, that's called the GOP. And it's up to the discretion of the local board if they feel there is a public need for a dance club and not serving food. So it's up to that point. Now, if your license says you're a restaurant, you have to serve food, and you're requesting that when you get approved. So if you decide to stop serving food, you are no longer a restaurant. So you're in violation of what you appeal for with the type of license. So you want to make sure, clarify, if you want to be a nightclub and you don't want to serve food, or you want to have the option of serving food, you can apply for what we call a general on-premise license. That's nothing more than a Section 12. It's just like being a tavern, a restaurant, a club. It's all part of that. You cannot just, upon your own, shut your kitchen down and just turn it into a nightclub because your license has been scheduled as or been approved as a restaurant license. So it's important you want to make sure on that. Now, can you be a restaurant and then still have dancing? Sure, you file for your entertainment license with the municipality. You can do all that. I know DJing, there's all different rules depending what municipality you're in. Some is live, some is DJing, some have karaoke night, some have game night. All that's involved with entertainment. You got to deal with the local board. ABC has no jurisdiction on the entertainment license, but it's all about being upfront. All right, and the local board, remember, approves on 2 things: public need and common good. And that's really what you need on it. Because if you apply for a general on premises, the local board may ask you for additional information. One is, what's your security plan? What type of entertainment you have? You're going to be using promoters. All of that is part of them making their decision. Because originally they approved you as a restaurant. You produce the menu, you're going to operate, the kitchen's going to stay open from 12 noon to 11 p.m. Then you change. That's not what you agreed upon and what you actually presented to the board. Did I get it? Thank you. Any questions on that?
No, this fits here. If we're a 501c, if we're a 501c, how do you do the guests, or do you have to have private members?
Yes. What we're going to do, the question is about a club. I have a whole slide on clubs. I'll wait to the end on that. All right? Any other questions? All right. So looking through all these areas, as you could see, the last thing is outside seating. Remember during the pandemic, the commission and the legislators changed the law to what they referred to as an expedited process. Before, if you wanted to do outside seating, people always thought, oh, outside seating came with the pandemic. It did not. It was always allowed. It's been allowed forever. People had patios and everything. It became very popular during the pandemic when all the restaurants were shut down and you couldn't have in-service dining. So basically what we did is we have right now out there probably around 9,600 on-premise licenses that have the ability to do outside seating. During the pandemic, if we had to go through the 3-step approval process for that, all right, and 50% of them applied, it's almost 5,000 people, we would never been able to inspect it. So what we did, we said, the commission met at a public meeting, set guidelines for outdoor dining, and what we did is we proposed to have a what we call a streamlined approval process where the local board did all the approval on outside dining. If you were an existing licensee, if you're already approved and working, you only had to deal with the local board to do outside dining. They followed the rules of the guidelines set forth by the commission. The local board approved it once the local board approved at the hearing, all they had to do was send us what we referred to as an amended LLA certification, which is the legal document authorizing it, and they changed the description on it, sent it to us, becomes part of our record. So when my investigators walk in, they see part of the record is a patio has been added. So all of that is streamlined if you're existing. If you're new, you have to go through the regular process. Any questions? All right, the next I want to move to, where can you find all this information? All right, we're going to jump to our website right now. We're going to do a quick run through, so navigation through the website. Also in the room, I just want to let everyone know our chairman, Gene Larizio, is here of the ABC and so forth. Gene, if you want to say a few words.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you for letting me interrupt for just one moment. As Ralph said, my name's Jean Larizio. I am the chairman of the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission, and I'm sorry I'm late. I definitely underestimated the traffic coming out of Boston, so I'm sorry about that. I'm sure Ralph has already conveyed to you that our goal today is to share information and to help you stay in compliance, really information that we think will help you stay in compliance and run a successful business. We welcome the opportunity to be here in Holyoke and thank Allie and the local board for arranging this and making it possible for us to come out. We hope this is an annual thing. We want to be a resource for you, whether that's today with questions you might have during the presentation or afterwards, and always via email or telephone calls to our office. So please know that we want to work with you and help you run a good business and be successful. So thank you again, and I'm sorry for interrupting the presentation. Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you, Gene. All right, so if you look at, this is our homepage, mass.gov/ABCC. As my deputy general counsel always says, this makes the ABC 24/7. Because you as managers and business owners, you're not looking on the website during the day. You're looking after you close down, if you have information or what you're looking for, filing amendments to the application. So when you get to the homepage, as you could see, normal stuff, it gives you our phone number, our contact. And the contact is excellent because if you're working with an investigator and you forget, you lose their number somehow, all their numbers are here. Everybody to the office, as you could see, everyone down the line, all their information is here. Then the good thing about this is if you page down on the home page, you're going to find 3 buttons across the middle. It says alcohol beverage state license, alcohol beverage retail license, and frequently asked questions. Our frequently asked questions, we put a lot of effort into that. There are hundreds of questions that we have gathered over a 7-year period. The most common questions on the line, and then it breaks down to each of the categories, depending what you are. The licensing process, if you're a Section 12 on-premise consumption, if you're a package store, if you're a farmer, brewery, distillery, winery, all the information is there. Right down to if there's cannabis involved, everything you can see, you can find in there, broken down the categories. They're great, very easy. It gives you all the items you need. So frequently asked questions, and what we did to even make it easier for people, we moved it into 11 additional languages. So you can find all the languages. You know why we know it's working? Every month we're getting like 450 hits on frequently asked questions. 50 to 60 is in the foreign languages. So we know people are utilizing them. So if English is not your predominant language, you can find one of the languages there to help you along the way. So it breaks it down. It's available 24 hours a day on every question. A lot of this saves you time. You don't have to call your lawyer to ask the question. The question and the answer is there. If you don't find the answer, feel free to give any one of us a call at the office. My whole license division is all there to answer questions. If you want to shoot us an email, shoot it to us, and we'll get back to you with the answer. Any questions on the frequently asked questions? Pardon me? 617, the telephone number for the ABC, 617-727-3040. Go right to extension 10. That is our receptionist, and she'll direct you to whatever department you need. Plus, you'll find the contact number right on our website. Any questions about the frequently asked questions? And also in this same category, if you want to see today's presentation, if you want to see the PowerPoint that we passed out, you'll see it right down there at the top, ABC Compliance Training 2025. So if you want to let someone look at this online, it's all there for the tools for you. Any questions? All right, let's jump back to the homepage, the 3 buttons. The other 2 buttons, as I said, alcoholic beverage state license, alcoholic beverage retail license. You want to look at the middle button, all right? Because everybody in this room, unless you're a farmer, winery, brewery, or distillery, or pub brewer, you are all what we call a retail license. There's 2 types of retail license. There's Section 12 on-premise consumption, like restaurants, hotels, clubs, etc. And then there is retail Section 15, which are package stores, grocery stores, everyone where off-premise consumption is done. So when you click onto that middle button, you see you got 2 choices. All right, it says, what would you like to do? Apply for either a new or transfer or amend your license. Everything I talked about on that first slide about change of manager, change of alteration of premises, you'll find everything there. You click onto that. All right, you page down, and here's a list of everything you can do as an amendment. All right, you click on to change a manager, most common one. It gives you all the oversight of it, and then you click into it. It tells you everything you're going to need to do before you submit this application. And then page 1 of the application is the checklist. Nothing is more frustrating than Alex at the local board and my ABC investigator when an application comes in and we're missing 50% of the supporting documents. It's not going to move forward. All right? So it's important, before you go in, just check everything you need. We streamlined all the applications. If anybody remembers the applications back in 2009, every one of them was like 12 pages. We streamlined them down. Some of them are only 2 pages. Some are 3 or 4, and that's it. All right? So you want to make sure you have everything you need. Check off list. We give you alternate selections for like proof of U.S. citizenship. We also, down the line, everything that you need there is completed with the application. Any questions at all? Every single application is set up in this format. You will see the checklist, then you will see the actual application to fill out, and it tells you the supporting documents you need. Does everybody understand that? Now, people say, oh, we get nervous. I got to give you my social security number, my bank accounts. We are governed by 93H. Means every personal information you give to us is protected. So we do not, at any time, a public records requested, we don't expose your date of birth. We don't expose your financial information related to your accounts. We don't expose your social security number. Items to that extent are protected. So anybody who's worried about that, the same thing the local board runs on. They have their own qualifications they do to protect, safeguard people's private information. So all of that is what we deal with. Even if we get a public records request on your application, all of that information is protected. Any questions?
On the social security number, I have a hard time getting my officers to give a full social security number. And let's be realistic, things are happening. Why not just use the last 4?
We can't run a query. We run queries on everybody. So we run queries to character fitness. We can't run queries on last 4. We need all the numbers to run the query. We run your name, your date of birth, and then your social security number.
I understand a query check.
Yeah.
But do you do a query check every time you put a person's name in there?
Yep. We run a query check on it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Next, Kyle, let's jump to back to the home page. Now on this page, if you page down a little further, after those 3 buttons, you're going to see a list of actions you can look at. See, it says more actions and services. This is where you can find out everything. See, the top one is commission advisories, active licenses, commission decisions. Commission advisories, all the advisories the commissions have put out since 2004. So if you're looking if you're looking for the guidelines for outside seating, you can find those in 2024. All right, if you're looking for what we refer to as the holiday calendar, which is one of the most popular ones we put out every year, you're going to see the 2024 25 holiday calendar. All right, and then you're also going to find the 2026. So we get a lot of calls at this time of year. Can I be open for Thanksgiving or whatever? We have the whole holiday calendar online for 2025. And then, of course, next year after January 1st, the 2026 goes in. You'll find that there. Other information you will see is our happy hour regulations. It's very popular now with a lot of the holiday parties coming up. We just put it out there. The commission sends it out every year as an advisory just for everybody to understand that there are rules about happy hour and what you need to do for versus a private party versus a party open to the public. All of that information is there. We are working on this right now to translate this into multi-languages. So we will put this in part of our frequently asked questions. You'll see it all in different multiple languages. It explains all the rules and everything you need to follow. So it's important to remember this time because here's what's happening. All right, you post something on social media and it is not governed by the happy hour laws. So you're violating the happy hour laws. What we get is one of your competitors take a screenshot and they send it to our investigation enforcement division and says, look what Sacramone's Pub's doing. They're having an open bar, open to the public on New Year's Eve. You can't do an open bar to the public. It's only for private events. And in the happy hour regulations, it talks about what a private event is. So what happens? You're going to pay a visit from us, all right, saying, look you advertise this, you cannot conduct this event. So we're going to give you a chance to correct it and take it down. If you do perform the event, we're going to charge you. So we don't want that to happen. And remember, 50% of our complaints come in on happy hour, and almost all other violations is from your competitors. Social media is your friend and not your friend. I want you to understand that. So if you're doing anything that's outside the box, you're going to run into the problem. So you'll see everything over here across the board. Right now, we're in renewal time. All right, it's right around the corner. The most important thing a licensee has to do throughout the year is renew their license during the month of November. If you follow the rules, you sign your renewal in the month of November, you submit all the supporting documents that are required by the local board and the ABC, an authorized person signs it, you automatically get renewed. It's when you drift outside the box. If you do not sign your renewal in the month of November, you decide to sign on December 1st, your license ends on December 31st at 11:59. You cannot operate on January 1st. That means you have to come back in and apply for a new license, go through the whole process again. That is everything across the line, which is tax releases, advertisement, 10-day advertisement waiver before you can have the hearing and so forth. And if the local board is not meeting the last 2 weeks of December, you're going to close. So remember, the most important things, authorized person to sign. Who is the authorized person? Anybody that has been approved as an officer, director, LLC manager, stockholder, LLC member, licensed manager, secretary, treasurer, any one of them can sign as long as they've been approved. If you have a new manager and you applied for a change of manager, it's not been approved, that person can't sign the renewal. Everybody remember that. Has to be approved. We see it all the time. So it's not the ABC's responsibility. It's not the Holyoke Board's responsibility to chase you for this information. I know you're required. You need to have an active fire safety certificate signed up by the Building Department Inspectional Services, and you need an active workman's comp policy before you can renew. Does everybody understand that? All right. Next, we're going to jump back to our presentation. All right, next thing I want to talk about is, now we're going to get to the part we're going to get rid of all the fallacies that are out there. This is purchasing of alcohol. Everyone in this room is a Massachusetts retailer or a Massachusetts on-premise licensee, off-premise licensee, or what we refer to as a farmer, winery, brewery, distillery. All right? Everyone in Massachusetts has to purchase from an authorized source. What an authorized source is, there's only two choices: a Massachusetts wholesaler and a Massachusetts manufacturer. That is it. All right? There is not a Connecticut package store is not is an authorized source. A New York package store, a New York wholesaler, a New Hampshire wholesaler, a New Hampshire package store are not authorized source. If you purchase from them over state lines, that's what we call bootlegging. All right, and you're going to have a major headache on that, and I'll give you a little story about what happened later. But it's important, the only ones you can buy from Massachusetts wholesalers and Massachusetts manufacturers. Now, where do you find that? Remember we showed you on the slide, is a commission advisories and active licenses. You click on active license, it gives you every state vendor you will find, all the wholesalers, all the manufacturers. And if you have a question to anybody, just ask them to see their license. Right on their license, it will say the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It will say a wholesaler under Section 18, their name and the current year. If they submit anything else on that, just take a picture of it and you can reach out to us and we can let you know if they're active or not active. It's important. Why do I say this scenario? We have a complaint called in, and I really thought the complaint was not real. It said, if you come to this location on a Thursday at 4 o'clock, there's a truck unloaded hundreds of cases of beer and alcohol at this location. And I said, okay, this really can't be real. It was detailed right down to the minute. So I give it to my investigation enforcement division, they go there. At 4 o'clock on a Thursday, this truck pulls up, hundreds of cases pull out. So of course, my investigators are very how can I say, are very nice to the licensee. They let them unload all the product into the location, all right? We did not want to impede any business. So my investigator walks in there and says, can I see the invoice? They give him the invoice. It's a New Hampshire package store. So guess what happens? We confiscate all those 100 cases of product, all right? You're charged with a violation. You appear in front of the commission, all right, at a violation hearing. I have never seen anyone in my 19-year career ever beat that violation. So what happens? You're found with a violation. You're going to get a penalty. It could be a suspension. You can pay a fine in lieu of the suspension, or you could be shut down. Here's the other negative point about it. You don't get the product back. The product gets sent out to a hazardous waste material facility and it's all destroyed. All right? You do not get it back because we have no idea where you bought that from. All right? So it's important on that you remember the cash you put out, because the New Hampshire package store did not give you a credit line. You pay cash for that product, and that product you brought to that store all gets destroyed. So think about that motion you're doing on that, and when you do that practice, you're going to lose on that deal on both ends. Plus, you got a violation. So we don't want to see that happen to you. The other fallacy, BJ's, Costco, and Sam's Clubs are not Massachusetts wholesalers. They are big package stores. Big box stores, they're package stores. Your supermarket is not a Massachusetts wholesaler. You can't go there and buy beer and sell it at your restaurant, vice versa. So those, we do not want to see any issues at all on dealing with them. Remember, go right to that list on the license, active license. You'll find every state wholesaler. Wholesalers, everyone knows, Marnetti's, they are Southern Glacier, they are Ruby Wine, MS Walker. All right, you got the manufacturers, which are Wachusett, you have Night Shift, you have Sam Abbott's Brewing. All of them are legal to buy from. And any farmer, winery, distillery, and brewery, you can purchase in Massachusetts their product. All right? Any questions at all? And the last thing about this to be careful about, there's a lot of pirated alcohol out there. Anybody know what pirate alcohol is? Correct. Okay, it's alcohol, for instance. It's alcohol that you may be buying off of someone, whoever knows who it could be. And what you're buying may not be what's in the bottle. All right, so we have an incident one time that happened where somebody pulled up with a car and they went into a restaurant and says, I got 5 cases of Johnny Walker Black outside. I'll sell them to you for $200 a case. Give me $1,000. Everyone knows a case of Johnny Walker Black is $900 to $1,000 each. So they're giving you a deal. Here's the problem with that. All right, you go and you buy from them, you don't know if that's Johnny Walker in that bottle. And here's the problem. During the pandemic, pirated alcohol got loose in the Caribbean and 9 people died because it was toxic. So think about the headache you're going to have on the amount of money. You think you're saving $8,000, $9,000. Think about what it is if someone gets sick from that product and dies. Never mind dealing with the local Holyoke board in the ABC. You're going to be dealing with the DA's office, the Attorney General's office, and the feds are going to be in on this. So think about putting your business on the line if that's something to happen. So the pirated alcohol you don't want on that. If you see people coming around, just alert the local police department of what's going on, all right? Or you can, if you get a license plate, you can send it to us and we'll investigate on that. Any questions on purchasing alcohol? All right, next.
Question.
Yes.
What's wrong with purchasing from a package store?
You don't have authority to do that. A package store is not a licensed wholesaler. All right, here's what happens. Give you an example, is that what people do is they ring up their bills and then they don't pay them. So they go on what they call the delinquent list with all the wholesalers. So what the wholesalers do is once you have, everybody's allowed 60 days of credit. All right. On the 61st day, if you don't pay that invoice, you get posted. It's called the delinquent list. It's under Chapter 138. At that point in time, no other wholesaler can give you credit. You have to pay cash. What people do is they ring up these tabs, all right, with all the wholesalers, and they decide, oh, I'm not going to order from a wholesaler no more. I'm going to go buy from a package store. A package store is not an authorized source. Authorized source is either a manufacturer or a wholesaler. All right, so it's very important that you remember that, because here's what happens. When you get audited by the Department of Revenue, when they come and audit you, they look at your, how much product you have purchased. All right, and if you're purchasing product that from an unauthorized source, what they do is this. They'll say, for instance, you deal with Marnetti's. This is the best scenario. You deal with Marnetti's, they come in and they do an audit on you. What they do is they subpoena they ask Marnetti's for your invoices. They look at your invoices and they show that you're not buying anything from Marnetti's, but you're showing this. All right, so it doesn't make sense to them. The other area is what's involved in this next slide, and I'll give you an example why. On Section 12 and 15 licenses, if you own multiple restaurants and you own multiple package stores, you cannot transfer the alcohol back and forth between those locations. That is a fallacy, all right? And what it does for you, it creates a double violation. So if I own a restaurant on 1 Main Street in Holyoke and I own one at 50 Broadway in Springfield, I cannot transfer the alcohol back and forth. Because number one,
Why not?
it's state law, you can't do that, sir.
What's the logic behind that law? Doesn't make sense to me.
All right. That's your opinion. I don't know how to answer that question. All right. So if you own multiple locations, all right, you cannot transfer back and forth. Every license is site-specific. So all the alcohol delivered to 1 Main Street's got to stay on 1 Main Street. If you decide to transfer alcohol from 1 Main Street to your other location, create a double violation. The store that's transferring is going to be charged as acting as an unauthorized wholesaler, and then the store receiving it is going to be charged with buying from an unauthorized wholesaler. So you create a double violation. You cannot do that. And then when DOR comes in, if DOR, Department of Revenue, ever audits you, they audit you by selecting your invoices. So if you have all this alcohol going to 1 Main Street, all right, and what they do is they look at how much you buy, they do a formula, say at the end, you should show this profit. All right, you're going to show all this alcohol coming in, and they're going to look and say 1 Main Street should have made this amount of money. Then they're going to open you up to a forensic audit. We don't want to see that happen. So you cannot transfer back and forth. That is, there's no collaborative buying has been allowed in Massachusetts. There's been legislation submitted, but it's never been approved. So on the issue of this, you cannot transfer alcohol between any location. We do not want to see you having a headache out of that. Anyone have any questions?
What does DOR
DOR is Department of Revenue.
I know, but there's a formula that you have to make a certain amount of money for the product, right? What's the formula?
They have a formula. You have to check with them what their formula is. They figure out how much product you buy and how much you should make, and that's how they figure out when they begin the audit process.
DOR, right?
Yeah, DOR, Department of Revenue. Massachusetts Department of Revenue. Any questions on that? Next slide. All right, last thing I want to cover before I turn it over to Kyle is delivery of alcohol. Delivery of alcohol has always been allowed in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. All right, people just think delivery came about during the pandemic. It did not. Every package store had the right to deliver alcohol, as long as they did one thing. They got a transportation license issued directly from the ABC. The license is Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 22, a transportation permit. Costs you $150, all right, for the calendar year. So each vehicle that you license, each one will have a transportation permit. And what great thing about that permit, it's a calendar year, January 1st to December 31st. And great advantage you have with that permit, you just don't have to deliver at Holyoke. You have the authorization to deliver anywhere in the Commonwealth. So you can expand your delivery business if you're a package store to all the surrounding municipalities. So it gives you the ability. But you want to make sure two things. You can license your company vehicle or you can license an employee vehicle. Every permit is related to the vehicle. You cannot switch them back and forth. All right, so either one of those vehicles you can use. You can also use third-party carriers. Everybody knows who the third-party carriers are. Those are the Uber, the Instacarts, the GoPuff. All right, all of those are third-party carriers. The advice I give you on a third-party carrier are these three things. Number one, make sure they're licensed. If you go to the next page, and I'll show you right here, here's an example of the license. All right. If a third-party carrier comes in, you want to see this license, Express Transportation License. As you can see on it, it's got the Commonwealth logo at the top. It gives you the name of the company, and it gives you the year the license is then. If they give you this right here, that means they are licensed as a transportation company in Massachusetts. You can do business with them. That's number one. Number two, you want to make sure you have a way to audit that they are checking IDs just like you do at the brick and mortar. The key thing we're finding on deliveries is a lot of the delivery drivers are not checking IDs, and you're responsible to make sure whoever third party you give to that, they are doing that, just like you do at your brick and mortar location. So when someone comes up to purchase anything, you're making sure they're at least 21 years of age and that they are not intoxicated. Your drivers and the third-party drivers have the responsibility when they're delivering to a location, that same thing goes. All right, you have the right to refuse the service or the delivery if you feel that person is under the age of 21, or if you look in there, you see a bunch of underage kids in the house, you have the right to stop that delivery if you think the person's intoxicated. You want to make sure you can check on that third-party delivery service. Some take pictures, some do scanning. You want to make sure you follow up on that across the board. And then the third thing is they're going to come to you with a contract. And this is what we're seeing out there. They're going to say, oh, we talked about this with the ABC. You cannot pay a percentage of the sale to the third-party company. A lot of them are going to come in and say, oh, we already got this approved by the ABC. You're going to give us 33% of the sale. That is a fallacy. All right? They can do that on the food end. ABC does not regulate food and sundries. We regulate alcohol. So you have to do a flat rate on the delivery service. All right, so if it's a $5, $10, whatever flat rate, it cannot be a percentage. Why? Because if there's a percentage, that means they have interest in your license. And you have to list them in your application, and you're going to tell me you're going to give an Uber driver interest in your license or an Instacart driver, you can't. So a lot of them come in with this proposal to take 33% of the alcohol sales. It's against the law. Just take a picture of that contract and send it to us. I'll have my investigation enforcement division reach out to them. So it's really important. Third-party carriers are allowed. Make sure they're licensed. You can deliver using your own commercial vehicles or your business vehicles and your employees' vehicles. Remember one thing, make sure the invoice is with the product. Because if any state trooper, any ABC officer, or any local police department see you delivering, all right, and they ask you, can I see the invoice with that and your transportation permit? If you don't have anything, that all that product can be confiscated. Transportation permit, invoice, all right, and the product should be all together. Everybody understand that on every delivery. Any questions? All right, next. All right, I'm going to turn this part of the presentation over to our General Counsel, Kyle Gill.
Thank you, Ralph. As Ralph mentioned, my name is Kyle Gill. I'm General Counsel of the ABCC, and I'm going to be going over some of our most common violations and how to stay in compliance. So the first one, and it's not always this easy, ABCC compliance checks. They're continuing throughout the rest of the year. And how you pass an ABCC compliance check is simple, more simple than what you're going to deal with in a lot of occasions. And that's your clerk, your bartender, they ask the underage operative for identification. If they ask the underage operative for identification, our operative turns around and walks out your establishment. They don't present you with a fake ID. They don't say they left it in the car. None of that. They turn around and walk out the establishment, so you pass. If you do deliveries, we are also doing compliance checks on your deliveries as well. So if you use one of these third-party companies, make sure they're checking IDs, make sure they have policies and procedures. Some savvy licensees have also done what's known as a secret shopper program, where they'll have someone of age, usually young, that's what the point is, 21, 22. They'll purchase alcoholic beverages for delivery, and they want to check to see if these drivers, whether they're your own or a third party, are asking for identifications. Because if they're not asking for identification for someone 21, 22, they're likely not doing it for 20 or 19 either. So If you're doing deliveries, make sure you let them know compliance checks. They can't happen on deliveries as well as the brick and mortar locations. Any questions on compliance checks? All right, next slide. As I mentioned, it's not always that easy. You come across people who aren't underage operatives and they're just trying to purchase alcohol underage. So there have been, and now there are 2 more, 6 identifications of which licensees can reasonably rely on. It's a Massachusetts driver's license, a Massachusetts liquor ID card, a Massachusetts identification card, a United States passport or a passport issued by a government recognized by the United States, a U.S. passport card, as well as a military identification. Those 6 for decades have been, you can reasonably rely on them. 2 new ones have just been added, types of identifications, just this past spring. And that's out-of-state driver's licenses validly issued and global entry cards issued by the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. So if one of those identifications, they have to be validly issued, I have to point out, but if they're fake, and I'll take a step back, if they're fraudulent, they are not validly issued, so they cannot be reasonably relied on. What tools can you use to determine whether or not an identification is fake or not? This is a book that all our ABCC investigators have. It's called the ID Checking Guide. If you went on Google and just typed in ID Checking Guide, comes up. Last time I checked, it's about $28. It's a great tool. It has every single driver's license, but the most important thing is it lists what the security features are on every state driver's license, including federal identifications. It even includes Canadian driver's licenses in here. For example, on Massachusetts, we received from, I believe, the city of New Bedford, a package store. He had confiscated about 100 fake Massachusetts driver's licenses. I looked up Massachusetts. One security feature is we all have the date of birth on the front of our licenses in 2 spots, one towards the top and then the bottom right, you'll see your date of birth as well. I didn't know this until reading the book. The bottom right, it's actually raised. So if you press your finger on it, you can feel that it's higher than the card itself. I looked at 100 of these fake identifications from Massachusetts. 90% of them knocked out right away because they were flat right across. So just from knowing just that small hint, that small piece of information, this store would have been able to knock out 90% of their fake IDs from Massachusetts. Another great tool is the ID scanner. We can't recommend a specific scanner to use, but the best ones connect to the internet and they perform regular software updates where they are getting updated with the most recent security features across the United States. The best ones too typically give a percentage. You'll scan the ID and it'll say 100% genuine. We've typically seen that means it's good to go. Anything less than 100, we found that most of the time they end up being fraudulent identifications. So at that time, you would accept it at your own risk. And that's one thing I want to point out is it doesn't mean you can't accept a Canadian driver's license. The only problem with that is you don't have any protection anymore. If the person with a Ontario driver's license is actually 22 and from Ontario, there's not an issue. Ultimately, if someone's 21 or older and not intoxicated, you can sell them an alcoholic beverage. It's just if you accept a Canadian driver's license, you do it at your own risk. So you might be asking, when does this help me? When does this come into play? The most common example is someone using their siblings' valid, say, Massachusetts driver's license. They come into your store, they come into your restaurant, they order an alcoholic beverage, they look young to you, so you ID them. They give you their oldest sibling's valid Massachusetts driver's license. You look at it, and the siblings, as a lot of siblings do, they look alike. They might have the same color eyes, hair looks, similar face. You believe that this is them, you serve them an alcoholic beverage. There might be a Holyoke police officer that sees that or an ABCC investigator that sees that. They inquire to the person, give me proof of age, and right away, I'm sorry, I'm 19. You might end up with a hearing before the Holyoke local board. You may end up with a hearing before the ABCC, but the difference is now you have a defense. You can say, I reasonably relied on a validly issued Massachusetts driver's license. It looked like the person. That's why I made the sale. It was reasonable. I thought it was them. Under those facts, I believe you shouldn't be found in violation. Now, just because it's validly issued, I'd like to say it's not really a get-out-of-jail-free card if it's one of these 1 through 8 types of identifications. So an example is the Massachusetts driver's license looks nothing like the person in front of you, I suggest to you that that's not reasonable reliance. If the person in front of you doesn't look a day over 17 years old, I suggest to you that's not reasonable reliance. Halloween's coming up next month. If someone's wearing a mask and you don't make them take it off and you just sell to them, I suggest if they end up being under 21, even if they show you something validly issued, that's not reasonable reliance. Any questions on that? No. Another example of when this doesn't apply is when someone of age at your establishment purchases, oh, yes, sir?
If you find that the person has an invalid ID, are you obligated to confiscate that?
That's a great question. So the question was, and I think everyone heard, if someone presents you a fraudulent identification, should you confiscate that? People disagree with me, including police departments on this. I would never tell someone to confiscate it. You may want to, I think the best tool is to call the police, and if you start calling the police, I think there's a good chance the underage might be out your door. But the reason I wouldn't say to confiscate it is, one, are you 100% sure that's fraudulent? It's tough. Number two, there was ever a physical altercation because I told you to do that, I wouldn't want that. So that's why with those risks, I would say, if push comes to shove, so to say, I would advise to give it back to them. But I do think a great tool in that situation is to call the police. Thank you. So going back to the other topic of when it doesn't apply, that's when someone over 21, say they give you a valid Massachusetts driver's license, you serve them maybe 2 beers, and they pass the beer off to someone in your establishment who's under 21. ABCC investigator goes in, maybe they have a half-drank beer now, they see, let me see your proof of age, they don't have it. Licensees are required to keep sufficiently close supervision of your premises, so you do not have the defense that, oh, well, I got a Massachusetts driver's license, I handed it to them. Because he handed it to someone else and you were required to keep sufficiently close supervision of your premises, you're not in violation for selling or delivering alcohol to them. You can be found in violation of permitting them to be in possession of alcohol. Any questions on that topic? There's also an exception to the possession of alcohol law under 21 in Massachusetts, and that's for your employees who are 20, 19, and 18 years old. Employees 18, 19, and 20 years old are allowed to handle alcoholic beverages in the course of their employment. They're allowed to mix drinks. They're allowed to stock shelves. They're allowed to be behind the bar. They're allowed to conduct sales. Just anything involving alcoholic beverages and then handling them, they're allowed to do, including clearing half-drank alcoholic beverages off tables. If they are under 18, 17, 16, and below, they cannot handle alcoholic beverages in the course of their employment. They can't do any of that. Just by the letter of the law, we actually had a violation in a municipality where it was a busboy in a black shirt, just clearing off tables. He had 2 half-drank beers in his hand, and a local police officer saw that he was in possession of alcohol. By the letter of the law, that is a violation because he was under 18 and he was handling alcoholic beverages. So I know that's a tough one, but just in general, if they're under 18, you don't want to put them in the position where they can handle alcoholic beverages in their employment because it is a violation. Any questions on that topic? Yes, sir.
If you go to a bar, how many drinks can you order?
So that actually is the next slide, I believe. Great segue to that. So, and I will address that issue, how many exact drinks. So there actually is no precedent on beer and wine and the set limit that someone can buy. There is, however, precedent in our courts for mixed hard alcohol. The case is actually just determined that someone serving, it was White Russians in this circumstance, they were served 6 White Russians in a short period of time, and the judge in that case said, no matter how they were acting, 6 White Russians in a short period of time, on that 6th one, that's a violation. You should have known they were intoxicated. But for beer and wine, there are no such limits. So here's what the law says on that. So to be in violation of service to intoxicated, service of an alcoholic beverage to an intoxicated person, there's really 3 factors. 1, the intoxicated person's on your premises. You or your employee either knew or should have known that they were intoxicated. and that thereafter, when they make themselves known, they were thereafter sold or delivered an alcoholic beverage. So known or should have known. So what do our investigators look for in these circumstances? They look for people, I guess this is common of any intoxication. People observe people intoxicated. They act loud and obnoxious. Their eyes are half closed. They're slurring their words. They smell strong odor of alcoholic beverage. They're having difficulty balancing. They're holding on to the bar for support. Those signs of intoxication, if they make them, if they show everyone that they're intoxicated, our investigators note that, and then thereafter they're sold or delivered an alcoholic beverage. That's where a violation occurs. And that occurs for beer, wine, White Russian. Yes, sir. If it's not a non-alcoholic beverage? Okay. So someone being drunk, so say someone was drinking down the street and they come into your premises and they don't ask for a drink, they're just on your premises. The violation of service to intoxicated is when you sell or deliver them a drink. So if you don't, you're not in violation of that. However, though, and I'll go over the next slide, you do have a duty to protect your patrons from foreseeable harm. So it is a good practice to make sure that they have a ride home safely or something like that. That's a good practice because licensees do have a duty to protect their patrons from foreseeable harm. Going back to this topic, you'll see here, it's Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 90, Section 24J. So the 24J report or 24J notice is what this is called. It's anytime someone's convicted of operating under the influence in the Commonwealth, where they plead guilty to it, they're asked by the clerk magistrate during their sentencing where they had their last drink. If they name a licensed establishment, that's recorded by the clerk of courts, and that's distributed to the Attorney General's office, the local district attorney's office, who a lot of times notifies the local board, and the ABCC. We are not the keeper of record of this information, so if you know the guy was actually across the street or he wasn't in there and you never served him, we can't change that document. And we actually, to be completely honest, find that they're not always the most reliable. For example, our investigators received a 24J notice. The guy said he was at a Red Sox game at Fenway Park on this date, and the investigator just looked up the Red Sox schedule, and they were actually in Toronto. So they're not always the most reliable, but what I can say is maybe if you have one, it's not something to worry about, but you have 3, you have half a dozen, you have a dozen, you can believe an ABCC investigator is going to go undercover onto your premises. They're going to blend in. They're going to go at night. They'll even order a drink. They'll be watching, and they'll be watching for your patrons to show these signs of intoxications that we talked about. And if it comes to their opinion that they're intoxicated and that they've made themselves known that you or your employees should have known they were intoxicated, and then thereafter you sell or deliver them an alcoholic beverage, that's when you're going to face a violation at the ABCC. Yes, sir, you have a question?
Gentleman comes into your club or bar and he wants a drink and you don't give it to him. He goes out, he's been drinking somewhere else, and he gets locked up for OUI. And he tells them that he had his last drink at your place. What's your recourse?
So your recourse is unfortunately not with us. You might have civil recourse versus him for, kind of harming the reputation of your establishment. But ultimately, at the ABCC, we don't create that record. You could certainly let the courts know, but I don't think, to be honest, they're going to change it for you either. Probably the most significant recourse you have is actually directly involving that person that made that false allegation against you. Any other questions before I move on to the next topic? A bartender training? So for retail licenses, and the question was, what about bartender training? For Massachusetts retail licenses, there is not a state law that mandates trainers get, tip certified, safe serve certified. That's not a state law. However, a lot of local boards, I'm not sure about Holyoke, there are over 300 local boards in the Commonwealth. They may have their own local regulations that require your servers to be tip certified. So for that, I would suggest either going online, finding the rules and regulation of Holyoke, or calling the local board and inquiring yourself. But for retail licenses, off-premises, on-premises, with the exception of caterers, which I'm not sure if there are any caterers in this room, but on-premise licensees, off-premise licensees, there's no state law that mandates a certain training for bartenders, servers, in general. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that, what is the limit for a bar, drinking alcohol, hard liquor or mixed liquor? Is there a limit per hour?
Per hour, the case law is actually it was the amount. So it was the sixth White Russian in a short period of time was a violation in and of itself. I don't know the exact time. From my recollection, it may have been a couple of hours, but just in general, I would advise, even if they're there for hours, I wouldn't recommend serving them that sixth one, certainly. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
For restaurant,
Yeah.
I have a few occasions that people want to bring their own bottles. How's that in compliance with the law?
So the question was, and I think everyone heard it, it was, can people bring, if you have a restaurant, can they bring their own alcohol onto your premises? So if it's a restaurant license, no. Technically, you would have alcohol on your premises that wasn't from an authorized source, what Ralph was saying, so it is a violation. There is an exception for club licenses and bottles of wine, where if it's a club license, a member can bring in their own bottle of wine, and there's regulations concerning it, but if you're not a club, if you just hold a restaurant license, it's not applicable to you. Any other questions on this topic? All right, thank you. We'll move on to the next slide. Delaying or hindering an investigator of the ABCC. So this violation, in addition to having civil ramifications like a ABCC hearing or a local board hearing, this is actually a statute that it's also has criminal penalties, and if you're in violation, you are subject to arrest. So hindering an ABCC investigator or authorized agent of the local licensing authority. A lot of times that's the local police. The most common types of violations we see is licensees locking ABCC investigators out of their premises or not allowing them in rooms in the licensed premises, just denying them access. This is a fallacy. An ABCC investigator and an authorized agent such as the local police does not need a warrant to come in and conduct an investigation on your licensed premises. It's not treated like your home. So just by locking them out, you are in violation of Section 63A, which is hindering an investigator of the ABCC or the local police if they're an authorized agent. Another common, not common one, less common, but obvious one is when someone's physically obstructed. The commission takes that very seriously. I don't think we've seen it in actually a few years, fortunately, but I do believe the last time that was actually charged, the licensee, there were other violations as well, but the licensee got their license revoked in that circumstance. The other common one is you are required to give information that the investigator can use while conducting their investigation. So if you have surveillance, that keeps 30 days and they ask, an ABCC investigator asks for surveillance from 2 days ago, and either you delete it or you refuse to give it, that's another example where you can be charged with hindering an investigation of the ABCC. Any questions on that topic? Okay, moving on now to licensees, and I touched on this earlier. Licensees have a duty to protect their patrons from foreseeable harm. And the reason we included this slide is because there's been an increase in complaints with regard to people having their drink spiked or non-consensual drugging at restaurants, bars, nightclubs in the Commonwealth. So we do ask that you just tell your employees and your bartenders to be vigilant about this, to be on the lookout. And if you do see it, in addition to making sure the patron doesn't poison themselves, call the police. The police are a great tool for discharging your duty to protect your patrons. Calling the police, specifically our courts have said when types of incidents arise where your patron's now in danger and you know that, you call the police, you protect yourself. And I want to point out the important word in this top sentence, foreseeable harm. Licensees have a duty to protect their patrons from foreseeable harm. So I'll give an example where something's not foreseeable. someone was drinking at another establishment in Holyoke, they come into your establishment at 11 p.m., they see someone they don't like, and they might have a history, they immediately go over to them and they start a fight. You, as a bartender or an owner, you had no reason to believe that that was about to occur. You had no hints, no clues, no idea that that was going to happen. You call the police come, maybe you're actually charged with, causing a disturbance on your premises. Under those facts, you should not be found in violation because it wasn't foreseeable. Here's where a difference occurs. It's 11 p.m. and people have been drinking at your establishment, and two people get into an argument and they're pushing and shoving each other, and your security goes over and just separates them. Doesn't call the police, just separates them. Now maybe an hour goes by and now they get into a physical altercation and someone gets seriously hurt or hurt at all. They break a bone. You can be on the hook for that, not in just the violation, but say if the person that gets hurt sues the person, they can also sue you as well. Because you had a duty to protect them from foreseeable harm. If the person involved in the fight has no money, you can be on the hook for those damages because it was foreseeable under those circumstances. Does anyone have any questions on that topic? All right, thank you. And now, this has been the law for a little over a year now, or the interpretation. The Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources and the Massachusetts Department of Health have ruled that non-alcoholic beverages from hemp-derived drinks containing CBD or THC are illegal in the Commonwealth. So if you have these drinks, you're not allowed to sell them. You have to take them off your shelves, and you can't sell them. You can face a violation on your liquor license for that. There is pending legislation to make these products regulated. It has not passed. It's only gone through one part of our legislature and not the other. It has to still be signed by the governor. It could be a ways away. But as it is right now, these drinks containing hemp-derived CBD or THC, they are not legal in the Commonwealth. And just to take a step back, alcoholic beverages containing THC or CBD are legal, and there's no bill to make them illegal. If it's an alcoholic beverage, it can't contain THC or CBD. It is then an adulterated alcoholic beverage. Any questions on that topic? And then I believe this is my last slide. This is a recent change in the law with regard to retail license managers. For decades, retail license managers have had to be U.S. citizens. That is not the case anymore. To be a retail license manager, you can either be a U.S. citizen or now a qualified alien under the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act. So the most common piece of document we are seeing for someone to prove that they are a qualified alien under the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act is a permanent resident card, also known as a green card. Also, a common document we are seeing is employee authorization documents issued by the federal government. Those are the two most common documents we're seeing for someone to show they're a qualified alien under the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act. There are other documents as well, but as I mentioned, those are the two most common. In addition to retail license managers now being allowed to no longer be U.S. citizens but qualified aliens, it also changed the law for sole proprietors and partnerships. Now, if you're applying as a sole proprietor or in a partnership, you no longer need to be a U.S. citizen. You can also be a qualified alien under the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act. The same proof would apply as it does a retail license manager. For whatever reason, the laws did not change for LLCs or corporations. Those laws are the same. If it's an on-premises Section 12, say restaurant license, half the directors need to be U.S. citizens for a corporation, and if it's an LLC, it's half the LLC managers. For a package store, for an LLC, it's all the LLC managers, and then for a corporation, it's all the directors. So as I mentioned, they did not change for corporations or LLCs holding the license, but now the new law allows qualified aliens under the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act to apply for a retail alcohol license as a sole proprietor or in a partnership. Any questions on that topic? Thank you all for your time and attention this morning. I will be with our team after the presentation is over, so if you had any questions that you didn't want to ask in front of the whole room, I'll be able to help you out after the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kyle. All right, the next slide I want to go into, I think I promised this gentleman earlier about club licenses. We always do a separate slide on club licenses. And the clubs I'm talking about are the fraternal organizations, the associations. They're the Knights of Columbus, the VFW, the DAV, the Elks, the Saints Clubs, all of them that are nonprofit organizations. They get granted a Chapter 138, Section 12. The type of license is a club license. On this club license, there's a fallacy out there that the rules do not apply to clubs. All alcohol rules, all governance, regulations, all apply to club licenses. First of all, when you are a club, you're only open to members and guest of members. You are not open to the public. All right? Number two, local licensing authorities can add additional conditions to that license, which require all non-members to sign in to a book and be present by a guest of a member. They can restrict how many times a non-member can come into the facility. They also can give you authority to do fundraising if you have a function hall and you raise money to support the organization and all that money goes to the nonprofit. All of that can be approved by the licensing board. Third is all your alcohol is purchased from either a Massachusetts wholesaler or a Massachusetts manufacturer. Fourth, you are not open 24 hours a day. You're open to according to the license that you approve for. All right, we get a lot of complaints. Clubs are open at 4 or 5 in the morning, or they decide to open at 7 a.m. You cannot do that. No one can operate between the hours of 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. So the fallacy about clubs being open because they're private 24 hours a day is not true. All right, and on Sundays, the earliest you can open with approval from a local board is 10 a.m. From Monday to Saturday, you can open as early as 8 a.m. So I want everybody to understand the rules apply to you. Same thing goes as far as people working the bar. Bartenders can be 18 years and older. Also, you cannot serve anybody that's intoxicated or serve anyone under the age of 21. Does anybody have any questions on that? All right, the next slide. This is what this is all about today, is working together. All right, the ABC works with many different state agencies, police department, state police, you name it, we work with a lot. We work with the U.S. government. All right, we work with the AG's office. We work with the DIA, Division of Industrial Accidents. We work with the DA's office, District Attorney's office, and all of the other state departments. All together as one is to help licensees stay compliant. One of the biggest things we have here right now is, as we work with all of these different individuals, I give you all their contact numbers here. If you have any questions or anything you think you may not be doing right, there are great programs all of these departments have for forgiveness. If you come and you figure out that you may not have been doing something right, all right, and you work with them, all right, they will make sure if you're not paying someone the correct way, they will make sure you refund them that back money, but you may not have to pay the penalties because you came to them asking for help. Same thing with the AG's office, Attorney General's office, with all the different programs they have. So it's important on that. The other issue we want to let everyone know is if an ABC investigator walks onto your licensed premises and something else outside of our oversight is going on, for instance, overcrowding. We know the 4 big days of the year that there's overcrowding. Everybody knows it's New Year's Eve. Everyone knows it's St. Patty's Day, the day before Thanksgiving. And anytime there's a playoff sporting event, places fill up. If we walk in and you are overcrowded, okay, we don't leave. We actually we call to the deputy chief of the fire department that night. They will come down. All right, they're one of the 4 individuals that have the right to shut you down on the spot because of life and property. We don't tell you to start evacuating the building. We call the fire department in. Same thing goes with the police department. If things are out of control, we will not leave the scene until the police department arrive on the scene. Same thing with the building department, because the building department is also the second individual can shut you down the spot. If egresses are blocked or there's unsafe conditions, all right, they will shut you down on the spot. We don't want to see that happening. Same thing with the police chief. All right, if there is life and property in danger, the police chief has the right to shut the location down the spot. I'll give you an example. It just happened 2 weeks ago. There was a murder at a Lawrence bar, all right, on Friday night. The intel for the police said there was going to be retaliation Saturday. The police chief came in under his statute and shut that place down so they would not have a continual problem or life and property be in danger. You do not want to see that happen. Then the fourth person that we deal with, and we actually have a slide on him, if you jump to the next slide, is the Department of Industrial Accidents. People say, what do they got to do with a licensed premises? Their oversight is workman's comp. Everybody here that has a business, you have to have an active workman's comp policy. And overall, everyone does a good job. When you renew your license, you present your active workman's comp policy, everybody's protected. Here's the problem, what happens? You renew in November, you present your current policy, then people let it lapse in January. I want to let everyone know, your insurance company, when it lapses, informs the Department of Industrial Accidents that you do not have an active policy. So they are going to show up on site. When they walk in, they ask you for your policy. You don't have an active policy, they're going to tag the door with the orange sticker and shut you down on the spot. So I don't want to see that happen. So don't let the policies lapse. And if you have any questions on your policies, on what coverage you have all links to those different areas. Any questions? The next slide involves the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. These are three big initiatives they're looking out there. They want to make sure licensees don't have problems. And as you could see, the diversity situation, the earned sick time, and the salary range transparency. If you have any questions on that, reach out to them. They will help you. They have a live person on the line that will be able to walk you through any of these issues. It's all about you conducting business and staying in compliance. Does anybody have any questions on that? Yes.
Sick leave, does that apply to full-time only?
What is it?
Sick leave, sick time.
Ye-
Does that apply to all full-time or part-time employees?
I don't have the authority to answer that question. I would say you got to refer it to the AG's office on how it runs. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. All right. Any questions on that? All right. The last part of the presentation, I want to bring up. Tom Carroll and I sit on many task forces throughout the Commonwealth. A lot of them involved with protected employees, misclassification, also protecting employers. All right, Tom is with the U.S. Department of Labor. His oversight is wage, hour, and child labor. So I'd like to turn this up to Tom right now.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to make this quick because you've been through an hour and 45 minutes of getting information. But I just want to help to prevent any violations for restaurant employers. I was an investigator for many years. The majority of my cases were restaurant cases. So Wage and Hour Division, we're part of U.S. Department of Labor. U.S. Department of Labor has many agencies. Wage and Hours, where I'm from, we also have OSHA, we have EPSA, we have Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's a big department, but Wage and Hour is the one that handles you'll most likely see someone from Wage and Hour apart from those other agencies. So Wage and Hour Division, we enforce FLSA, that's minimum wage, overtime, record keeping, and child labor. That's the core of what we enforce. We also do FMLA, everyone knows what that is, family leave. We do all the ag workers in the state, farm workers, we make sure they're paid properly, we make sure they have proper living conditions, and we do H-2A, H-2B workers. Those are foreigners that come here temporarily and work on the farms. We make sure they're being treated fairly. We also do government contracts. That's usually prevailing wages. That's when government money is spent at like a post office or a school or something. We enforce those prevailing wages as well. So you have to remember, next slide, that there's the State Department of Labor and there's Federal Department of Labor, and there's some confusion because you have to comply with both. They're two separate agencies, and one you're thinking that you're in compliance, but you may not be. Example is minimum wage. Under federal law, it's $7.25. No one's going to work for $7.25, but under state, it's $15. So by complying with both, you have to pay the $15 an hour for minimum wage. In overtime in Massachusetts, employers in the restaurant industry or hospitality aren't required to pay overtime. However, under federal law, they are. So you're complying with both. You have to pay overtime in the hospitality industry. Usually if the state gets complaints from restaurants, usually they're passed on to us because it's usually an overtime issue. Next slide. So the Fair Labor Standards Act, first one is minimum wage. We rarely find a minimum wage violation because of the $7.25. We don't enforce the 15 unless it's over 40 hours. But it is a problem with tipped employees. There's a lot of confusion with tipped employees. In Massachusetts, you have to pay them $6.75 per hour, and they have to make up to $15 an hour based on that $6.75 plus the tips. Usually that's only one table an hour. It's seldom that they don't make the $15 an hour. We know servers usually make $30 to $40 an hour on decent nights, but they're considered minimum wage employees under federal law. The reason why is because you're not paying them the minimum wage, you're paying them the $6.75. The wages that they're receiving are from patrons, and that's not out of your pocket. So you do have to pay them. They are treated as minimum wage employees. And what that means, there can't be any deductions. If a table walks out, you can't say to the server, oh, you have to pay that $80. That was your table. You should have prevented them from walking out. You can't make that deduction because they're a minimum wage employee, and any deduction from their wages will bring them below minimum wage. So any other deductions as well, like if they drop a tray of glasses or a wrong order, just be careful because that would be a minimum wage violation. And for overtime for tipped employees, it gets confusing as well. You don't do overtime. You don't count the $6.75 as their wage. You're paying them $6.75, but they're also getting tips. So if they're working overtime, you have to pay the halftime of minimum wage, which is $15. So you'd have to pay that $7.50. So if any server is getting $6.75 an hour and they're working overtime, you have to give them the $6.75 plus the $7.50 halftime rate, which would be $14.25 an hour. So that we find a lot of confusion with that as well. If a bartender is making $10 an hour and they work overtime, you have to pay them that extra halftime of $7.50, so their overtime rate would be $17.50. Okay, and overtime, another issue is salary versus hourly. A lot of restaurants and back of the house employees, they're cooks or line cooks. Sometimes they're paid a salary, but there's only a few people that are exempt from overtime under a salary classification, and it's usually a manager. It's an executive person where they supervise more than 80 hours of work per week at the establishment. A chef, a sous chef, a kitchen manager, a front of the house manager, they're all exempt from minimum wage and overtime. You can pay them whatever you want. They do have to receive a minimum of $684 a week. That's basically minimum wage, so that's never the issue. The issue is when you pay an individual who's not exempt from overtime and they're still getting a salary, like a line cook. If you're paying them $1,000 for their 50 hours of work, the schedule that week, they're getting $20 an hour. They're happy with that, and you're paying them the salary of $1,000. If we do an audit or an investigation and we find that this salaried employee didn't receive proper overtime because they were misclassified as being exempt from overtime, that individual would be owed some back wages. If they're getting $20 an hour for all 50 hours, their regular rate of pay is $20 an hour. So if the hours worked over 40, you'd have to pay time and a half. So that would be an extra $10 an hour, half of 20 for the 10 hours of overtime, which would be $100 for that week. $100 isn't too much, but if you go back a year, that's 50 weeks, that's $5,000. 2 years we go back, that's $10,000, and then we do liquidated damages, which is a penalty. You're talking $20,000. So just be careful on hourly employees being misclassified as exempt from overtime. Even though you're paying them a salary, they're not exempt. One way you can change that, and I always say, promise the employee that they'll still receive their $1,000 a week, but you're going to pay them hourly. You can pay them $18.25 an hour instead of $20, and say, I'm promising you 10 hours of overtime. So that the overtime at $27 plus the $18.25, that equals exactly $1,000. So it's almost like a technicality, but that's how we have to enforce the law. So be careful on that. Make sure that anyone who is not exempt from overtime is being paid hourly and being paid properly. One other example is, let me see, someone that's misclassified as an independent contractor. You don't recognize them as an employee. If they're working 20 hours at your establishment as a cook, and they're working at other restaurants as a cook, not related to you, they're your employee while they're there. They're not an independent contractor as a cook because they're using your facility, they're using your electricity, your gas, you're going by your menu. So they're an employee. A lot of times employers try to classify employees as independent contractors because they're not covered under the Fair Labor Standards Act, and you don't have to pay minimum wage, overtime, or all the other requirements. Be careful on that one as well. All right, next slide. Record keeping, 3 years. Just keep your time records and payroll records for 3 years. You do need them longer for the IRS, so if that's kind of an automatic for the 3 years. If anyone's if anyone's 19 or younger, keep a record of their date of birth. You're not required to keep date of birth in your records for your employees. However, for someone that's 19 and under, you do. You need proof of date of birth. If there's ever a child labor violation, you want proof of what, or showing the government what they gave you, showing that they were not a minor. So anyone under 19, make sure you do that. If you have for your time records, if you pay any employees cash, make sure you keep a record of those cash payments. Once an employee leaves, a disgruntled employee, they were paid in cash because it benefited them, it benefited the employer, but the employer never kept a record of the cash payments. We go there, we do the audit. Do you have any proof of payment to these cash workers? No, but I paid them $1,000 a week in cash. Do you have any proof of that? No. So then the employer is stating, oh, he only paid me $10 an hour for every hour that I worked. Since the employer doesn't have a record of a cash ledger, we have to go with what the employee says. So just keep record of all payments. It saves you a lot of headaches. Once an employee leaves, everyone thinks their employees are great. As soon as they leave your establishment, you know, they're your enemy, and they'll try to do anything to get any back wages they can after they leave. We're going to go on to child labor. Child labor, it's broken down to 14 and 15-year-olds and 16 and 17-year-olds. 14 and 15-year-olds have a limit on the amount of hours they can work per week. They can only work up to 18 hours per week. They can only work from 7A to 7P on school days. They can't work during school hours, so basically they can work from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. during the week. When school's not in session, they can work up to 8 hours a day on Saturday and Sunday, but again, only 18 hours for the whole week. If school is out or summer or vacation, they can work up to 40 hours a work week, but not more than 40. For hazardous occupations for 14 and 15-year-olds, there's not much they can do in a restaurant other than being a busser. Probably they can do dishwashing in the kitchen if you allow that. They can like chop up some vegetables with a knife, but they're kind of barred from using most of the equipment or cooking over a fire, flame, etc. So just be very careful. While I'm on this topic, I just want to point out this child labor bulletin. I don't have copies today, but if you Google child labor bulletin, it lists all the jobs that 14 and 15-year-olds can do. If it's not on that list, they can't do it. It's very black and white. It's very clear cut. When we go on to 16 and 17-year-olds, there's no restriction on hours worked under federal law. However, under state law, there is. They can only work up to 48 hours a week. So make sure that if your 16 and 17-year-olds don't work more than 48 hours. For positions that they're not allowed to do, there's a few in the restaurant industry. There's they can't use a meat slicer. They can't use a dough mixer, commercial dough mixer, anything that could seriously injure the individual. They can't use a trash compactor. I know most of them, you just press a button, but if the employee tries to reach in to move a box, they could lose their arm. So they're not allowed to use a trash compactor. They're not allowed to go on the roof of your establishment. It's just no roof to go up and check something. And the most common one is delivery drivers. If you have any delivery drivers for your establishment, make sure that they're 18. You can't be 17 and be a delivery driver. It's considered a hazardous occupation because it's a timed delivery, and they may be rushing and then they don't have experience driving yet. So if any delivery drivers, make sure they're 18 years or older. Next screen. And these are just a few more things. I'm just about out. I just want to point out a few other issues. Someone asked about sick hours. It doesn't matter full-time or part-time under the state. You have to pay them an hour of sick time for every 30 hours of work, up to 5 sick days a year. There is an exemption if you have less than 11 employees, you're not required to give sick time. So that's something to know about as well. Immigration. Yep, what? Fair Labor Standards Act. That's what we enforce. The Fair Labor Standards Act is minimum wage, overtime, etc. You have to pay for all hours worked. Under federal law, you're not required to give sick time, vacation time, anything like that under federal law. State is the law that requires the sick time. And they also require when someone leaves, you have to pay them their vacation time that were on the books. You don't have to pay for unused sick time. Immigration status, that's important to know. We don't have jurisdiction on that. It's very hot right now on the street because obviously with ICE going a lot of locations, when we go in, we notify you right away. We're from the Department of Labor. We even say we're not from immigration, nothing to do with immigration, U.S. Department of Labor. We'll show our credentials. And that even sometimes doesn't do enough. We've seen employees run out of the establishment concerned that the government is there. But we do go unannounced because we want to see a true picture of the establishment. If we're saying we're coming next Tuesday at 10, you're going to have one cook in the kitchen and one server, when usually you have a few line cooks or 4 people in the kitchen and 4 servers. So the reason we go unannounced is we want to see a true picture of the establishment, not to play games. It's just to see how many employees there actually are. Temp agencies, make sure that it's a big red flag for us. Temp agencies, they're kind of shady. If you don't want to handle, if you have some undocumented workers at your establishment, or you believe they are, you say, I don't want to deal with the I-9, I don't want to deal with all the paperwork, you hire a temp agency. There's a lot of temp agencies out there that just specialize in getting jobs for undocumented workers. That's their role, whatever, but they get the individual, they tell the establishment, okay, we're going to pay the minimum wage and overtime. So they send your invoice for $20 an hour for these workers. The individuals were told they're getting $15, and then the $5 goes to the temp agency for the paperwork, for workman's comp, unemployment insurance, etc. 2 years go by, and then an employee calls us and say, hey, I've been at this establishment, I talked to other workers, I'm only getting $10 an hour. I'm getting paid $10 an hour in cash, and I work 50 hours, I get $500. So when we do the audit or the investigation, we ask the employer for records, and they say, oh, we use a temp agency for these individuals. So then we ask the temp agency for their records. All of a sudden, the temp agency disappears. It comes back to a P.O. box or an address that doesn't exist, so they just disappear. They've made probably, $500,000 over the last year or two. So now we go back to the employer and say, hey, your employee wasn't paid properly. And they said, well, it wasn't really our employee, it was a temp agency. We say, well, you're both joint employers because the employee's working at your establishment and being paid by the temp agency, so you're both on the hook. So since the temp agency went away, you're required to pay all these back wages. This person was only paid $10 an hour for the last 2 years, so it's a big dent in back wages that you have to pay. You've already paid the $20 an hour for that individual. Now you have to pay another $5 for all the hours worked for the last 2 years. So a way to prevent that is just, if you have any temp paid employees, just ask the employee, oh, how much do you receive an hour from the temp agency? How are you paid? Are you paid cash? Are you paid by check? If you work overtime, are you paid time and a half? You can prevent that just by asking them, and it will save headaches as well. Retaliation, we do a lot with retaliation. We have attorneys in our agency. If you have egregious violations, meaning that you have willful violations, say knowingly hired undocumented workers and holding their passports, or say I'm going to pay you $10 an hour, and if you complain, I'm going to call ICE. We have retaliation where we'll have actually punitive damages for that employee, and it's a slippery slope if you're involved in that because our attorneys are real aggressive on retaliation. I just want to point out that if you do have egregious violations, it could affect your liquor license, and that's why I'm part of this, is that we all work together now, all our agencies, and we share our information. So just be careful because egregious violations can affect a company's liquor license. And last thing I want to say is we have a program now. It's called the PAID program. It's Payroll Audit Independent Determination. So say if you feel that, oh, I found something out today, I wasn't paying someone properly, you can do a self-audit. And if you call us and say, I want to do a self-audit, what we do is we give you a waiver, which means that there'll be no liquidated damages, there'll be no litigation. If you find there's errors and say, oh, okay, I'm going to address this and pay what I owe, you can pay that and you're free to go. It's going to cost you some back wages if there's violations, but at least we're not going to be as aggressive in the violations, and you're not going to have liquidated damages. We're not going to bring you to court, so you won't have to get an employment attorney. We'll save you in the long run. That's basically what I have today. I just want to point out I have these pamphlets in the back. There's an 866 number on it. It's 866-4 US Wage, and as a federal agency, it's one of the few federal agencies where someone actually answers the phone, believe it or not, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. All the investigators are on a wheel. They're required to be on the phone every, 10th or 12th day, and when you call, you have to enter your zip code. You're going to be forwarded to the nearest office, which would be Springfield, actually. We have an area office in Springfield. They're going to answer the question you have. If for some reason they don't answer, they're on the line with someone else, leave a message, and they have to call you within 24 hours. Everything is looked at, and you are going to get a call back. Any question you have, we're here to help you. We're not here to say, oh, we got you. Any question, you don't have to identify yourself. You don't have to say your company. Call us and say, hey, I have a kid, he's 15, he's using the fryer later, can he do that? We'll give you the answer, and it will prevent any violations. So that's my time. I rushed through it for you, but again, any questions, please give us a call. And thank you for your time. Yes, sir.
Last bullet.
Yep.
What does it mean?
It's employer and employees both have struggles, meaning that the employers, there's not much profit availability in the restaurant industry because of the costs of everything. So you try to cut corners, but the employees should be paid properly because they're working and they need to be receiving minimum wage. So what we always say is we try to have an equal playing field. Why should someone follow the laws and someone not? That's unfair. And a lot of times, we get complaints from competitors against a company where they say, oh, I heard this employee who used to work at this establishment was paid this way. Most of our cases are complaint-driven. However, hospitality is one of our initiatives because it's one of the 4 main categories where there's the most violations. Any other questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Well, I promised everybody I'd get you out of here by noontime, so we got 1 minute left. I do want to thank again Alex and the entire team putting everything together in the venue too, Holyoke Media, for holding the event today, and also Representative Patricia Duffy, who organized the concept of bringing us out here to get everyone together out in Holyoke. So I thank everybody for the time. We'll be available if anybody has any questions. Thank you.